Welcome back to another tutorial. In this tutorial, we're gonna build this beautiful to-do application with our server action in Next.js. And there's a couple of features we're gonna build. We're gonna build how to create a to-do application. For example, this we can do learn Next.js, hit enter. It's gonna create a to-do app, and you can see we have two different types of styling over here. One have the green logo of the tick mark, this cross line through, and this like a little, you cannot like edit this anymore. Once that are finished, you cannot edit it, but you can delete it. So we have this. Once you're done with this to do, you can click on the tick mark over here. It's gonna make sure it's done, and then you can like delete it to make deletion. So we have like a couple of things. You're writing a to do here, and then you're editing this to do. You can edit that to learn new 14 Next.js. You can edit that, and also you can change the status of the to do, and you can delete the to do. So there's like a lot of good CRUD application operation going on over here, and it's really crucial to learn all those, as if you're trying to build a full stack application, you need to know how to build this CRUD application. So we're gonna use Next.js, server action, and MongoDB, Prisma to do the backend database as well. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to support my channel so I can bring more tutorial to you guys. And yeah, let's jump right into it. Okay, let's get started with our project. And before we dive in, I want to show you something so we have like a good idea on what we're going to tackle and how we're going to go about it. So you see this diagram in front. This is like the timeline of our project. We have 5 major steps to complete to get to the end result. The first step is going to be installing NextJS app. Then we're going to install the Prisma. We're going to connect the database, which is going to be our MongoDB database. And the fourth part is basically building component and server action. And then the fifth part is we're going to connect them all together, the server action, to do all the CRUD operation. So we have a lot of writing, editing, and deleting. We can do all of that to-do list operation in one setting with the server action. So I'm going to go over all the steps slowly, and it's going to be a very hands-on tutorial, so make sure you follow along. I will have some links down below so you can like check them out. So first thing first is we're going to install the Next.js. Now in order to install Next.js, you need to have node npm installed. So I hope you guys have that. Once you have that, just click npx create next app at latest. Those are dashes in between next and app. So do that. Once you hit click enter, it's gonna prompt you to install Next.js. I say yes. This is like 14 and above, so this is the latest project, so it should be all up to date for you guys. The project I'll name is to do next. So we have a to do next app install. We'll do TypeScript, ESLint, Tailwind, src, app router, customize default, yes. So all of them are default. I didn't pick any option, so now let it install. Once you have that installed, what we're gonna do is go into our directory, so cd to do next, and then I'll open up the code editor in that directory. So we have that ready to go. I can also start the project just to see what it looked like. So that's gonna be our simple Node.js project. See over here, it's loading. So we have our next project ready right here. This is the initial template. Let's not worry too much about it. First, we're gonna do our step-by-step diagram method. So we have done the Next.js installation. The second part is we're gonna do Prisma installation. So that's like our database basically. So what we are going to do is npm install Prisma --save -dev. We have our Prisma installed. Next, we are gonna initialize the Prisma database. In this tutorial, we're gonna be using MongoDB. I think it's a really easy to set up. So we're gonna do is npx prisma init dash dash data source dash provider, and it's going to be MongoDB. So that's going to be our data source provider. Once we have that, it's going to initialize a Prisma folder over here, and you can see we have like a schema right over here with a MongoDB database. Now they're gonna give us some next step, which is to set up the database URL from the MongoDB, and then run Prisma generate to generate the Prisma client, and we can connect the database with our project after that. So what we're gonna do is like type in the model of our data, so we have that ready before we connect the MongoDB. So we have to-do ID is string, add ID, add default. Then that's inside the parentheses, we're gonna do UUID function, and then map. This is gonna be a underscore ID. And then we're gonna have a title, which is gonna be a string. Could be have an empty title too. So it's completed. It's going to be a boolean with a default value of false. So it's completed will be empty, and we can like click on it to make it true. We're gonna add that functionality later, and then create it at, so we can display it in different order of the way it is created. So it will be in the date of now function. So we have our model created, which is good. Next, we are going to jump into the MongoDB to connect our data. Okay, I logged into my cloud.mongodb.com. This is the MongoDB dashboard. Once you log in, you can create a new project over here. We're gonna name this to-do next. I'm gonna call it YT because of YouTube. And then we are good. We create next. I'm the project owner, create. And then we're gonna create a cluster of free. I'm gonna name it to-do. And that's pretty much it. So free option, you can change the name or you can keep the cluster 0 as well, which is the default. So I'll create the deployment. Then we're gonna give you a password. Make sure you keep it in the env so you can like use it later on. And then we're gonna also have our name. So I'm gonna put the name in here as well. And choose connection method. We have that database added, and then driver. So for the driver, they're gonna tell us for connection method, we don't need to use this because we're using Prisma to connect the MongoDB. So you can click on done, and then the cluster will be created once you refresh it. You can also add an IP address, which is gonna be 0.0.0.0, so we can access from anywhere. So we don't run into any problem. So let's go to the database, if this is still creating. So once the cluster is ready to use, you can do is you can go to the connect, click on the driver, and they're gonna give you a URL. Just copy that URL and you can paste it on the database URL, which the Prisma generated for us. Once you have that, you can copy in your password in the password area, and you are not actually done yet. So what you have to do is you have to follow MongoDB want us to connect. So in order to do that, you have to go to the connect database MongoDB on the Prisma doc. Now you don't have to go here. I can show you what you have to do is the URL, you have to specify the database in here. So in the URL that we copied from MongoDB, they didn't specify the database over here. So we need to do that in our own way, and that is to do. That's the name of the database that I wrote down, and you can like delete that part, just keep the majority in there. So they want to connect using the database name up in front at the last area of it. So you need to have to edit that part and put your database name in there. Database name is the cluster name. If you forgot about it, you can go to your cluster and you can see the to-do. That's the name of the database. So that's the one I put in right here. So Once we have this string ready, which is our reference right here, I'll put the link down below just so you can see it. This is, they're like specifying it, username, password, host, port, and then the database. So that is important. But anyway, once you have that, you should have it connected pretty much. Now, the only next part you have to do is you have to do the Prisma generate, px Prisma generate. This is basically gonna take the environment variable, the details, the string, we have URL, and then work with MongoDB to connect them together with the Prisma. Once that is done, we have the Prisma client installed, and they're saying we can use this using this kind of option right here. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna create a folder in our component in the app. Let's do it under the source. So we have a folder up here called utils. Let's rename it properly, tools, and make sure it's in the source folder. So we have utils, and then we're gonna create a file called prisma.ts. So we can actually copy paste this if we want, and it's basically the same thing, just copy paste that part. So what we're doing is we're using a Prisma client to kind of like generate a new Prisma client over here. So we can use this to change the data in our application. So this is basically what controlling the Prisma to MongoDB. So we could have to do export const Prisma and the new client, and we should be good. We can use this function Prisma client to kind of like change, like insert data, delete data, edit data in our application. So that's the setup for Prisma so far. So we did NextJS installation, Prisma installation, and the third step was connecting the database. So we are done with that basically. We haven't seen the proof of it, but let's make some component and try to change the data, see if it changed from our NextJS application. So first thing first is we are going to do is go to the page file and start making some changes over here. So we're gonna delete everything the div has to offer, which is the template, and then delete the main as well. We don't need any styling in here. So we can do is we can create a div and then create a class name, start styling with Tailwind CSS. If you guys are not familiar with Tailwind CSS, I have a tutorial, make sure you check that out. Right here, flex, justify, center, flex of column, and then items center as well. So inside that, we're gonna create a span, which is gonna be our text. So it's a to-do app for the text, and then class name is gonna be text. For Excel, font will be extra bold, and then we're gonna keep it uppercase. Let's check if we are making any changes actually in here. Start the server again, npm run dev. It should be appearing on our server. Refresh it. So we have a to-do app on running. We have all of this coming up here, which is great. Let's keep on coding some more. So in the next one, we're gonna add a h1, and then we're gonna call it class name of text of 5XL, a little bit bigger, and font will be extra bold, and then uppercase as well. Margin bottom of 5, and text would be center. So there we go, and then we're gonna add a span just to differentiate the width part, which is width in a small letter, which is gonna be a lowercase. So lowercase in this one, and then out of that we're gonna create our server actions text. So we have this with server action, which is good. We have those in place. Now next, after the h1, we're gonna create another div. This is where our to-do application is. So we're gonna have the input bar and all the to-do, we're gonna map it through here. So first thing we're gonna do is flex justify center, flex of column, and then items center, and then inside that we're gonna add our to-do input bar. So input to-do goes here, and then we're gonna map to-dos over here. So that's our job that still need to be done. So let's start doing the input to do, which is going to be like an input field over here, and then we have a button over here. But in order to do that, we're going to separate things out, because we're going to reuse the input field for the edit function, and we're going to reuse the button for other buttons in our app, like the save button for the edit field. So we are going to separate things out, and in order to do that, we have to go with the React way, which is creating components. So I'll create the component on the source folder, so we have everything a little bit separated out, because app folder, we just want to keep everything strictly inside whatever the route and the app location pages. Since we don't have a lot of pages, we just gonna have just one pages. This is where we're gonna most of the work will be done. So we don't need to create different route on our app. So component, we're gonna create, let's start with the input component, and then here we're gonna create the input component, input.tsx. So this is our first input component, and here we're gonna do is we're gonna generate the React application. That if you're not familiar with that, I have an extension called React CS7 React Redux snippet. So when I type in RAFCE, it's gonna generate me the component by itself, which is great. So I have all ready to go. In here, we're gonna create the input, add the input element from the HTML React, and then in here we're gonna create some props. So we're gonna take in the input component is gonna take in some name props, type prop, what type, placeholder prop, and then a value prop. And we're gonna create a prop, input props. And I like to keep everything separated out, so I'm gonna create under the util, under the source, we're gonna create a folder called types and type, and then in here we're gonna create index.tsx. Sure, put it there. We have it, and the first type we're gonna do is our input prop type. So I will export interface. You don't have to do this in here, by the way. Like, I just want to keep everything separated a little bit, so we have things in order. So we have input gonna take in name, type, placeholder, value. Placeholder would be a string, but we want to keep it optional. And then we're gonna have a value as well. Keep it optional because it might not have a value when it started off. You can also have this right over here, and no need to create a different type folder for it, but I just want to keep things in order and separate it out so we don't have that issue coming on. So I'm gonna import that from the types. So we have that going on for us, and then we're just going to apply the props over here, name over here, and then type over there, placeholder, and then we're gonna do a value here as well. So we have everything in order and good. Now the next part is we're gonna use some styling here. So it's gonna be a block width of full, padding of 4, margin horizontal of 2, border rounded LG, which is rounded large. Text will be base, background will be gray of 700, and then border would be gray of 600. A placeholder would be gray 400. The text would be white. So we have the input styling in place. Let's see how it's looking like. We can start adding the input in here. So we're gonna be adding add to do in here. The add to do is gonna have the input. So let's create a couple more components so we have that in place, so we can add buildup, add to do. The add to do is gonna go over here, which is gonna be input to do. So we can have we're gonna add to do items here. So that's good. So in order to create that, we need form, input, and button. We have the input component ready to go. It's taking some prop, putting in some prop, and there's some styling. The next component we're gonna create is form, which is our big one yet. So we're gonna create form.tsx. So inside the form, we are going to our CE in here, and we are going to be adding our form in here, which is form. So we have the form element, and form element is going to take in children. So everything we pass in inside the form element will be inserted in the children. And in here, it takes in children, action. Action is where the server action is going to take place. So submit. And we're going to have the form props. So let's go to the index.tsx on the types and start exporting, creating form props. So we're going to have children, which is going to be React node. So React node. And then we're going to have action, which is our form action. It's going to take in form data as a prop. Form data, which is going to be form data, and then void it out. And then we're going to have class name would be string, and then on submit would be a function, optional function right there, and then out will be void. Let's bring that up into the form over here. Import that as well. So form is taking children, which is whatever we put inside. The action would be the server action over here, server action over there. And then we're gonna have our ref2 now to reset our form. So once we click, it's gonna reset the focus of the form. Now, in order to do that, we need to bring in our React hook. And that is use ref hook over here. And once we use ref hook, we have to change the whole component into a client component, which is going to be use client over here. Now, our form is a client component right now, and it's not a server component. So in order to use the server action, we have to basically pass in server action function in here. So that way we can make our server action work inside a client component. So we have that going for us, which is good. And then we're gonna add the on submit as well. What's gonna happen? We're gonna do on submit, and then ref is gonna be equal to ref, and then the action we are going to be taking care of. So we need to create a ref in here. So use ref would be an HTML form element, and the out would be a null. So we have the ref passed in. Now for the action, we need to change it up a little bit, and in order to do that, we have to type in our async function instead, because we're going to be resetting the ref inside the action function, and it's going to take in form data as it usually does. And then we're going to do the action function. We're going to call the action function, which is basically going to be changing the data, and then we're going to reset our ref, which is the form itself. So reset the ref. So we have that passed in. This would make sense when we start applying the action to our form, and I'll go over that in a little bit as well. So that part is done. The next thing is we need to do is create a button. So button in here. Now we're gonna do RFCE for the button, and then we're gonna do is, this is gonna be a little bigger function because we're gonna be changing certain things, kind of like modifying. It's gonna have more room for that. So we're gonna type in text, and then on click the button. We're gonna have an action button property in here, and then BG color. So we're gonna like change the background color of the button. And then we're gonna pass in all the props. Because some of the props we probably not gonna pass it when it comes to styling. So that's our button right here. And what we're trying to do is we're gonna make a button props on our types. So let's go to the types and let's create export interface button props. In here, we're gonna have like a type of button. If not, we're gonna do a submit and a reset. That's good. Then we're gonna type in text of string, or kind of like a React node text, and then on click, because we are going to have some icon in here, so we're gonna pass in some icon in the text, so that way it could have a string or it could have our React node. Then we can do a click, which is gonna be void. The action button is basically a boolean, so it tells us what kind of, if it's true, we're gonna add certain style. If it's not true, we're not gonna add certain style. The BG color would be a string, which is basically a Tailwind class string to change the color. So we have that button props in there. Let's add that in here as well. Make sure we import that. So once we are done with that, let's start typing in the button over here. So we're gonna just type in a button over here. And then the text would go inside. So injecting the text over there. And then we're gonna have on click as on click as well. Then we're gonna have a type of type. And then we're gonna do is a class name. Now for the class name, we're gonna be using a library called CLX. And we're also gonna install the React icon. So we can like inject the React icon like I told you on here, so we can like able to inject the React icon on the button props as well. So we're gonna install npm install CLS and then React icons. So once we have those two packages installed, we're gonna start changing the button here with the CLX, because we're gonna have some condition to meet to change the button IDs. So CLSX. And we're gonna do is like action button. If this action button is true, then we're gonna add certain style. If it's false, then we're gonna use the other style. So if action button is true, we're gonna use this style, which is gonna be text of white. Hover, we can use BG of blue. 800. Focus is equal to ring 4. Font would be medium. Rounded is going to be LG. Text is going to be small. PX would be 5. PY would be 2.5. Padding top and bottom. And then we're going to have a margin E of 2, margin B of 2, and focus would be outline none. So that's the styling we're gonna have. And if the action button is false, then we're gonna do a different style, which is basically gonna be our background color that we're gonna bring in over here. Hover of BG color as well, and then we're gonna copy paste whatever we have over from the font medium. So that's the styling set of it. The way you use CLX is we are basically having an action button to decide what kind of style we want. This is gonna come in slowly once we start building out. Then I can explain you why I put it over here and not like why we have a condition in here instead of just putting it in one single line. So that's like our action button. We are all set pretty much. Next we have to do is we have to do add to do. So that is going to be in our component as well. I'm gonna create a folder called to dos, and in here we're gonna do is add to do.tsx. And then we're gonna do is in here we're gonna create a form. And in the form, we're gonna have an input. The input is like the one we just created. And then we're also gonna have a button here, like the one we created in our component as well. So we're gonna bring those two, and we're gonna have an action in here. The inputs, let's have some style in here. So we have flex and gap of 2. And then we're gonna have name would be our input. Type would be a text, and placeholder would be add to do here. And for the button, we're gonna have a type of submit. So since we have inside a form, once we click on the button, the form's gonna work is server action, which we're gonna add in a little bit. And I'm gonna explain how that works under the hood. The text would be add, and then background color would be BG blue of 600. And then we're gonna bring in the add to do in our page file. So right here, let's do the import. We're gonna do the image right here. Let's see how it's looking like right now. So we didn't define the form, so go over here and define the form. So we have some kind of form in here. We can type in here. The button doesn't look so good. The action is obviously missing. So let's focus on the button styling, like why it is happening. So let's go to the button one more time and check all the styling we have. We have all rounded over here. So that's wrong spelling. Okay, now we have something going on over here. We can like start doing our functionality, and we can fix the styling a little bit later. So far we have the to do in here, and what to do is doing over here is taking in a form. You have an input called add to do here, and a button called add over here. It's like a submit button, and the input have the input name in here, and that's basically it. But what we're trying to do is we're gonna create server action. So once we click on this button, we want to have server action take care of our data, whatever we type in here, and inject into our database. So that's the promise of server action. Instead of calling an API on the back end to inject the data, like send, before all the server action, we used to call an API, post request, and send the data in a body. But with the server action, we are not gonna do that anymore. We are not gonna call an API to do all those stuff for us. We're gonna directly create a function which is gonna inject the data into our MongoDB. So makes database implementation and CRUD operation a lot easier. So let's start our server action. The first thing we're gonna do is inside our source, we're gonna create a folder called actions. And inside that, we're gonna create index.tsx. And our first server action is going to be adding a to-do data. So for the server action, we need to make this whole file server. So that means this is a server component, and we can use server action in this file. So first, we're going to create a function called async function. Async function called create to do. This is gonna create the to do. It's gonna take in the form data, and here we're gonna work our way to inject the data to our MongoDB. Now, how we do that? We first import Prisma that we created in our Prisma client from Prisma client, not the Prisma client, from at utils/Prisma. So remember, we create a prisma.ts, and here we have a Prisma client, which is basically generated to connect to our Prisma schema with the database URL to MongoDB. So we have a connection with this. So we can use this function to generate, to inject things to our data. So it should be small Prisma here. So first we need to do is we need to grab the data from our input. from our input is right here. And then we have a name called input. So we're going to use this to get whatever we are typing. So whatever we're typing in here is going to be grabbed using the input right here. And we're going to do that by using const input is equal to form data, which is coming from the form data props over here, dot get slash input, and then we'll write as string. So we're getting the data from the form action over here. Right now we haven't implemented it yet, so we are not going to be able to get anything, but let me finish this function and then we're gonna put that in our add to do over here. So once we get that, we're gonna make sure that if input is not trim, then we are not gonna be returning the data, just return data. If it's trim, what we can do is Prisma dot to do. Remember, to do is our database that we created of the model over here. So whatever you write down over here, just lowercase it, so we can add that to create. And then in here, we're gonna create the data. Inside that, we're gonna create a title of input. So whatever we're grabbing it from here, it's gonna be injected to our database, MongoDB. Next thing we're gonna do is revalidate the path. We need to refresh the path so we see the data is generated. And that's pretty much it. Let's start by adding action over here. And we're gonna create to do from actions. So let's recap one more time. We have a form with input and button. Once we click on the button, the submit is gonna start working. The submit, when it start working, the action function is gonna grab this input via this form data, which is the props of the action. And then we're gonna be using the Prisma to inject the data to our MongoDB database. Let's see how it is working right now. So I refresh everything. I go back to our project. I type in, let's have our MongoDB in here too as well. So we can go to our database, refresh it, new to do, and I click add. It's going in. We don't have any error. Let's check on the MongoDB database right here. Browse collection. And there you have it. I just typed in a new to-do, I clicked the add or enter, and it created a new to-do on our database. So you can see how super easy it is to inject data to our database using a server action. All you have to do is create a form and then create a server action file and create a function that's gonna do all that for you. So we have that going for us, which is really good. We have the data injected. Let's map the data in here so we can see how the data is looking like. So what we're gonna do is go to the page element over to, where is that? On the app page. We're gonna map the to-dos so we can see all the to-dos in there. So I'm gonna create a div right here. Class name of flex column, gap of 5, items center, justify center, and then margin top of 10, width will be screen. And in here we're gonna do is map the data. So first, in order to map the data, we have to fetch the data. So we're gonna use our Prisma again to get the data in our database. So I'll do is import Prisma from our util. And there we have our Prisma. In here, I'm gonna create an async function, which is gonna grab the data. And then we're gonna do is const data is await Prisma dot to do dot find many. It's gonna find all the data, and we're gonna select basically all of them. So every one of them who have a title, we're gonna grab the title. You're also gonna grab the ID. You're also gonna grab is completed, and then we're gonna order by created at with ascending order. So we have the data in here, and then we're gonna return it up down here. Once we have the data, we're gonna call the function in here. Make sure we change that into an async function. And const data, we're gonna await that function. Instead of doing fetch on Next.js, we do async await, which is a lot easier to grab the data. So we have the database in here. We're just gonna map through all of that in here. So data.map to do ID, and then we're gonna do is parentheses div, and in here we can do ID is equal to ID, and then we're gonna do is to do title. So we have something going on over here, which is good. Key will be ID over here. Let's go to our, we have new to do, learn Next.js action, enter, and is right there. You see, we go back to our database, we refresh the database, and we have a new learn Next.js action. Let's write this part out. We're gonna have a click action to see we are done with the to-do. Is gonna create a font of tick mark. We're gonna have an edit, and then we're gonna have delete to-do over here. So let's start doing that. In the to-dos, we're gonna create a couple of different components. First thing would be to-do.tsx. That's going to be our main component. So in here, we're going to do a couple of different things. We're going to have a change to do, edit to do, and delete to do. So let's start with simple steps over here. So we're going to have a div over here. We're going to have some styling, and then we're going to have like change. Let's write it down over here. Change to do. Then we're gonna have edit to do, which is gonna be like an edit of the to do, and then we're gonna have a delete to do. So these are just functionalities that we can do on the to do itself. So we have a deleted icon over here, which is gonna be handled by the delete to do. Edit to do is going to handle by edit to do component, and change to do is going to be like the change to do component. So let's start off by writing the change to do, which is kind of like a little bit easier one. So we create a change to do function in the to do. Let's move that into the to dos. So over here, we're going to change to do.tsx, and in the change to do, we're going to create function, and in here we're gonna do is we're gonna create a form. In the form, we're gonna bring in input. We're also gonna bring in button. Now let's import that. Import all our function. So we have that all working for us. For the form, we're gonna create an action which is gonna change some action for us. So in order to change, I think we added one action over here. What we can do is we can make it more specific. Here, instead of add to do, the way we can also import is like we can import as actions, and then we can use actions dot create to do. So that way we know this create to do is an action, and we don't confuse that with some other functionalities. So that way is a little bit more cleaner to write. So we're gonna do that here as well. Import everything as action from action. Since we have an index on the action, we can just create this. So we have an action going on. So what we need to do is we need to create a name, which is gonna be input ID. So we know which input that is, so we can find the data through that exact input ID. And then value would be todo.id. So we have the ID as a value, so we can take care of that. And type would be hidden. So we don't want this input to be located anywhere. And then this is gonna take a to-do, and that to-do is gonna coming from the types. So we're gonna create a types of to-do over here. Export interface to-do props. ID would be string. Title would be string as well. Is completed would be a boolean. To-do will have all of that, so no need to worry. Created at would be a date. So we have that in place. Let's just add that into over here. Bring that up, add the to-do props, and then we're gonna use that todo.id as the input value. So we can use this value to kind of change find the exact ID we're looking for and change that to-do list item. Let's go back to the change to-do and add a little bit more button in here. So for the button, we're gonna have an icon in here. So icon would be, we are not add that yet, so let's leave it as this. For the icon, we're gonna do is text. We're gonna add an icon, which is app check React icon. So this is coming from the library that we just installed, React icons. You can find more information about the icons in this website, reacticon.github, so React icon. You can search for any icon in here and it's not show up. We're using this one, so you can like import that using this. So that's the idea behind it. So we have the icon in place, which is good. Next we're gonna do is we're gonna add the input button of action button. So we're gonna have that to true, so we have that style applied to it. So we have on the button, we have like an action button is true. We're gonna add this style. Since we don't want to play around, we're gonna play around with this a little bit. So we're gonna add that as well. So we have like a background color separated out. So we can do that using right here. We can go over to the change to do, and then we can do is bg color. So if we're gonna create some logic, so if it's completed, then we're gonna do a green background. If it's not completed, then we're gonna do a blue background. And let's see, that's pretty much it. We're gonna do a submit as well, because we want the form action to be invoked when we click on the button. And that's pretty good. So that means if the to-do is completed, the check mark is gonna turn green. If it's not, the check mark is gonna stay blue. And this is happening right here, background color. So if the check mark is true, we're gonna have a bg color prop in here to green, and that green is gonna be applied over here on the button. So that's the idea of this. And let's create our action over here so we can like start changing that completed task. So this is gonna be a little small one, pretty much. This is gonna be pretty straightforward. So we are gonna go to index, and then we're gonna create export async function, change status would be form data, and if we take in form data as a props, as the action does, then we're gonna do is input ID. We're gonna get the input ID. So input ID is the form data dot get input ID as strings. Then we're gonna do to do, which is we're gonna find the exact to do. So Prisma, we're gonna bring in the Prisma to find the exact one. Find unique, and that is where we're gonna type in where it's gonna be ID as input ID. So what that means is this form gonna have a value of todo.id. So we're gonna grab this form element and it's gonna have a value of ID. So in our action, we are basically grabbing that and then pasting our ID over here. So whatever the value of that input ID form is, and then that ID is used to find the Prisma, our database. So it's gonna go through all our database over here and find the ID that matches with this ID over here. And then it's gonna pull that up. Once we have that, we can make changes to it. So the way to do that changes is that we're gonna do, we're gonna do like update the status. So once we click on the change status, it's gonna find the to do and we're gonna update the status of the to do. So we're gonna do is to do whatever it is, we're gonna turn it on the reverse. If it's false, it's gonna turn it into true. If it's true, it's gonna turn it into false. Now we have to update the database. So we're gonna do is await prisma.todo.update. Where we're gonna update is gonna be the same ID as before. So input ID, and then we're gonna change the data of is completed to the new data. So that is gonna be data will be is completed to the update status. So that's pretty much of how it is gonna be locating over here. I think we are not getting, oh, we have a comma over here instead. And then we're, last but not least, we're gonna like revalidate the path, of course. So we have a refresh on our home path. So we're gonna get the new change data. So once again, recapping, we're grabbing the input ID to get the value of the input ID. And then we're finding the to-do using the ID of the exact to-do. And then we're changing the status of the to-do. So whatever the to-do is completed is, we're gonna reversing it. And then we are injecting the reverse data into our database after doing calling the Prisma update. And then we're gonna revalidate that. So let's bring that action over here. Change status. We have dot, and let's update the change status on the to do. So we're gonna bring in the change status over here. So let's update the page a little bit. So we're gonna do is we're gonna add some styling over here. So class name would be width of 10 by 12. Auto, let's add the class name inside instead. MX would be auto, flex items center, justify between, BG of slate 900, padding Y of 4, padding X of 20, rounded to XL, and then we're gonna have our change to do appear over here. And remember, we are also bringing in to do from here. So to do would be to do dot to do props from the we also have one issue on the change to do. So the way to fix it is we're gonna do is to do dot to do props, so that way that error is gone. That's a TypeScript error. So that's pretty much what's going on here. We're gonna then pass in the to do. So we have everything passed in as it is needed to. That's good. And then define, we need to import that for sure. We don't need that. So let's jump into our server action, see how it's looking like. Change to do, and then we have to, we need to add that to do into our page, by the way. So let's go to our page, and what we are gonna do over here is gonna add to do over here. To do as to do as to do. I'm gonna import that to do as well. So we have something going on over here. You can see we're starting to build it, but it's working right now. We have the change to do in place, and the change to do is being implemented into the to do over here, which is great. We have the change to do working, and it's pretty good. Let's click on it and see if there's any changes. It turned green, right? So that means if this to do is completed, it should turn green. Let's go to our database. I think this one should be turning green, or the newer one, or the newer one. Both of them had like is completed to false. So we are waiting to see if it's completed is changed to true. So one of them is changed to true. So the other one, you click on it, change green, the database should update as well. So both of them are true. Click on it again, it turns blue. So it's back to, it's completed to false again. So that means that is working. That is amazing. Let's start building this part out so we have more data to be seen. Let's start by adding a span over here, and then add a class of text to center, font bold, and then uppercase, and then we're gonna do a grow over here. And we're gonna do is to do the title, and then we're gonna do a div over here, class name of flex item center, and then mx of 2. And in here we're gonna do is we're gonna put the edit to do over there. So we have that in place. We're pretty much gonna do a similar thing for the delete to do, except we probably don't need that. So that's how we are gonna be supposed to be doing it. So you can see we have the new to do. We can also change in order. I think the newer one should be at the top. New modern NextJS. We type it in, it should be on the top instead of bottom. So the way to do is when we did the mapping, let's see, let's go over here. I'm gonna grab that into descending order instead of ascending order. So we have that reversed pretty much. So that's great. We have it working. Let's start building the to do in more details. Let's do the edit to do and the delete to do, and we should be going in a good direction there. So edit to do is gonna have our input. So when we click on the edit, it's gonna bring our input. We're gonna type whatever it is, and we're gonna update the edit to do text title. So in order to do that, create another file called edit to do.tsx. Now in this, we're gonna do the component, and then let's start building it out a little bit. But for this component, we are going to need the use state React hook. So that means we're gonna be changing this to a use client, because when we do the edit, we need to keep track of the stuff that we are typing, and we're gonna use that using use state hook. And for that, we need to change it into a use client, and we're also gonna bring in the use state from React. We don't need this. So the use state is going to be a snippet, edit to do state, and then we're gonna do is probably nothing in here. So let's do a boolean over there. We're gonna check through that to open the input field and close the input field. So building it out, just style it as flex gap of 5 items center, and then we're gonna have a button in here. This button is gonna open up the text area, so kind of like a modals type-ish. So, and it's gonna have an on click, and then we're gonna make an on click function on the top. So up here, const handle edit would be set to the state to the opposite of edit to the state. Opposite of edit to do. So we have that in here, and then I also want to make sure we have I named it state over here, because usually you don't do this, you just keep it like that. But the reason why I did it, because it doesn't interfere with the other action function name. So we're gonna take a look at that in a little bit. And so that's good. That means we have that implemented. So on click's gonna change the boolean to true and false, so we can open it. And we're gonna have like a text over here of md edit, which is coming from the icon as well. And then we're gonna have set as an action button. So if we look into it, we should have a button. Let's put that into our to do over here and bring it up as an import. Go back to it. This to do is not defined. Should be defined right now. But yep, so we have that in place. Let's do that more. So we have like a action button. We click on it. It's gonna change that to false and true. So if it's true, we're gonna we'll show a form over here. So right here, we're gonna do is edit to do state. If it's true, then we're gonna show a form. If it's false, we're not gonna do anything. So in here, we're gonna bring in the form, and then we're gonna bring in the input as we have done to all of the other one, and then we're gonna have a button. So that's that. We're gonna import all of them in our project. We have the button imported already, so that's good. And let's start building it out a little bit. So we're gonna have action, and then we're gonna have input. Let's start building the input ID. Value would be todo.id, so we can find that exact to do. So for the button, we're gonna have type of submit, and then text would be save. It's good. And then we're gonna have one thing is like when we click on this, it's going to change the handle submit. That means once we click on this, it should close the modal. So let's see if we can show it in here. To do state over here. Name that state as well. So we click on it, it should open up, or it should not open up. We're gonna do the to do props, and then we're gonna pass in the to do as well. So that way we have everything in here. Let's see how it is looking like. We have a input open, input close. So that's good. We have it kind of like working in our sense. We have to do some styling for sure, but for now, I think this is okay. Let's add the styling in here. flex, justify center, and then add these two inside. We also have to do another input over here, so I'm just gonna do that right now before this. So this input is gonna have it's going to have the new title, or this one have a new title, and this input's just gonna have the hidden finding input as well. So this input is gonna have the new title, so I'm just gonna say is new title, and the value is gonna be the new value. So I'm gonna have a placeholder in stack. The placeholder will be edit to do, and here we're gonna do is name of input ID, value would be todo.id, and the type would be hidden. We don't want the other one to be hidden, so this one we should be able to see it. So that means once we click on it, we should be able to see this, and we can type and save to make the action happen. So what we are doing over here is we are grabbing the to-do ID for our data action to find the exact item, and we're also grabbing the new title ID to find the new title, which is we're gonna type in over here. So whatever we type in over here is the new title input, and whatever this is the whole place. So we have the ID in here for the whole area, so we can check and find the exact to-do item and change with the new title. So that's what is happening over here. In here we have to type as text in here, so type would be text. So there we have it, and we're gonna create an action for this. So it's gonna be a little different one. So edit to do, there's a couple of things happening. Let's go over here, we have to create, change, and now we're gonna do edit. So we're gonna find two things over here. First is the new title, which is basically the new title right here. So whatever we're typing in on the input, we are grabbing it right over here, and then we're gonna grab the whole to do, which consists the ID. And then we're gonna do like Prisma to find it. We're gonna update it. Where we're gonna update it is the ID of input ID, and what we're gonna update it is the data of title to be updated to input. Or we can do a new title. So we're gonna do like to new title. So we have like a good mapping of the naming as well. So then we revalidate the path. So just to recap once again, I will clean things up a little bit. We have edit to do on the right hand side. So new input, whatever we're typing in, we're getting it in here, and we're getting the input ID through this input, which is passed in through the to do ID value. And then we're grabbing the ID and we're injecting a new data over here, and then we're validating the path. Let's add that action over here. What I'm gonna do is actions dot, I'm gonna bring in the action first. So import and then we're gonna do is actions dot edit to do, and once we submit it, we also want to close out the form. So right now, if we do this, save, it changes it, but the form stays open. So we're gonna create a function to close this form out by changing this Boolean value. So we're gonna do is on submit, we're gonna handle submit, and then we're gonna create another function over here, const handle submit to set to do state to the opposite of it. So what's gonna happen is, or just straight up false instead. Gonna close that form out. So let's say new to do title, we save, we close the form, and new to do title appears. We're gonna fix the styling in a little bit, just hold tight. We're gonna add the delete button and edit the styling a little bit. So we have that going on. We are pretty much done. Next we need to do is like the delete functionality, and we are good to go. So let's start over here. We have to do this. So let's make another component over here called delete to do JSX. Let's start building that out. It's gonna be very similar to edit delete to do, but we don't need to change anything. We can just straightly delete instead of adding the input button over there. So it's gonna take in to do, and it's gonna have to do props. Return would be a form as usual. Due to our action, we're gonna have our input, we're gonna have a button over here. We're gonna import all of them and make sure importing the right stuff. And then we're gonna do is type of hidden. As always, we're gonna have name, input ID, so we know exactly which one to delete, and the value would be to do .id. And for the button, we're gonna have action button to true, and then we're gonna do type of submit, so we submit the action. Background color would be red color because of delete, so BG red of 400. Text would be trash icon, so FA trash from React icon. And then we're gonna bring that, there's gonna be like action over here, we're gonna add that. So delete would be going over here, so I'll add that in here. Import, this won't work because we are missing the action, so let's just add the action to it. So we have that, but the action is missing on this. Change up to, we can add a little style over here which we missed out. So we can do is full over here. We have all the way to the full, and then we can fix the other styling later. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add the delete button and have the action over here. So let's go to the action and then create the delete action over there. So it's gonna be straightforward as well. Async function delete to do form data const input ID is equal to form data dot get input ID, and then we're gonna await the prisma dot to do dot delete, and then we're gonna do where ID should be input ID, and that's basically it. We're gonna delete that, and then we're gonna revalidate the path to our home path. So we're getting the form input ID through the todo.id on the form hidden, and then we're just deleting it, finding the ID, and we're revalidating it. That's pretty much it. So we can bring in the action over here. I'll go ahead and add the actions in here to make sure we have everything in place. So the input is hidden, so I misspelled that, and everything should be good. So we have the input and the button. Let's go back to our to do. Let's delete this, delete that. Everything is working as expected. So new to do, learn Next.js. It's all in place. That's good. We click on this, it turns green, and then we edit this part to learn React. And there we have it. We click React. Like one thing you notice is like when I click on the tick mark, I shouldn't be able to do edit because I'm already tick marked it. So I'm gonna do is add a functionality over here called if to-do is completed. We're gonna return the to-do. So that way the function is returned and we are not able to change it. So we can't change this anymore. I am also going to add some styling so we have like a better idea of which one is done, which one is not. So const to-do style equal to text decoration. To-do dot is completed. If it's equal to true, then we're gonna have a line through. And if we're not gonna do anything. And then we also gonna change the opacity a little bit. If to-do is true, we're gonna change it to 0.5, else we keep it 1. And that style is gonna be added to here on the div. We'll have a style. Let's play around with that so it's more visible. So once we're done with this, we shouldn't be able to edit it, but we can delete it and delete that. So let's do finish server action tutorial. You have that, click it done, learn new Next.js. You can edit that too. Make new tutorial. We get that to done. Delete. Thus we have it. So I think we made a good operation over here. But we might need to add a little bit of styling over here. So I'm just gonna grab a for and items of center. Just add that in. We have a little nice styling going on right now and responsive as well. So just to recap a little bit, I know we have covered a lot of bases with this app, and the main part about this is having a server action, a good practice of creating different server action. I think we create a bunch of server action. We had server action for creating a to-do, changing the status, then editing the to-do and deleting the to-do. These are very crucial. All of this you would end up using in a big CRUD application app. If you're creating a Twitter, you need to know how to delete a tweet, edit a tweet, create a tweet. Same goes to any kind of Instagram post, Facebook post, LinkedIn post. Like all this operation is similar as this to-do app. It's just the database are different. So it's a good practice to get our hands with this, practice with this. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. How yours turned out. I know there's a lot of code in here, so make sure if you get stuck, check my code on the GitHub location link down below, because sometime you might have a little typo, it could cause some problem. You could have a little things here and there that could change things for you. So you know everything is working as is, and you can edit, save, delete, and however you want you can do that. You can also do new title, and if you don't want to edit, you can click this again, it will stay as is. So just a little tips there. But check my other tutorial out. I have a lot of tutorial. I have like a Next.js full-on course on my YouTube channel. Check those out. Tailwind courses. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel, and see you on the next video. Hope you guys have a lot of fun building this.